These are all of former President Barack Obama's tax returns from the year 2000 to the year 2015. We here at MSNBC dug them up using the rigorous investigative tool known as Googling Obama tax returns. And here are all of President Joe Biden's tax returns from the year 1998 to 2021. Again, all of them are public. All of them are online. You, as a citizen, can examine them, pore over them until your heart is content, if tax returns make your heart content. But on top of the long-standing tradition of voluntarily releasing taxes to the public, every president since the year 1977 has been required to undergo a mandatory IRS audit of his taxes while that president is in office. This week, 2 congressional committees revealed the blockbuster news that somehow, President Trump's taxes did not. They did not undergo that mandatory audit. Trump's taxes didn't get audited, in fact, until Democrats in the House of Representatives started asking questions. And that was in the year 2019, which was considerably after Donald Trump took office. And none of the audits of former President Trump's taxes since then have even been completed. It is the year 2022. So what happened here? The initial and most generous explanation for what could have happened here was that this mandatory audit process just wasn't working broadly. Given the fact that every president up until Trump publicly released his tax returns, you could see how these mandatory audits might have fallen through the cracks. I mean, they were already releasing them, right? But now, thanks to excellent reporting from Charlie Savage over at the New York Times, we know that that simply is not the case. Both Barack Obama and Joe Biden had their taxes audited by the IRS every year, even though their taxes were already public. So why, or rather how, did the one president since Richard Nixon to not publicly release his taxes, how did he not get audited? Who at the IRS let that happen? For the first 9 months of Trump's presidency, the IRS commissioner was an Obama appointee, a man named John Koskinen. He told the New York Times that his only involvement in Trump's tax returns in that time was making sure they were kept in a secure location. Okay. Then there was the interim commissioner that Trump appointed named David Cowder, who served for most of 2018. He actually held 2 jobs at once. He was both the IRS commissioner and an assistant Treasury secretary simultaneously. So he was busy. And he did not respond to the New York Times request for comment about Trump's taxes. But then, for the bulk of Trump's time in office, the IRS was run by a relatively unknown tax lawyer named Charles Rettig. President Trump appointed Rettig to the position after Rettig wrote an op-ed in Forbes magazine in 2016 defending then-candidate Trump's decision to not release his taxes. IRS commissioner terms are long, so Rettig literally just stepped down from that position in October of this year. And when it comes to these supposedly mandatory presidential audits, Rettig also told the New York Times this week that he did not attempt to intervene in Mr. Trump's audit. So we have 2 of Trump's former IRS commissioners saying, effectively, not it, and a third who hasn't responded to requests for comment. But under all of them, Trump's taxes didn't get audited until House Democrats started nosing around and asking questions. As a reminder, we are a week away from the year 2023. It's literally around the corner. And still, none of Trump's mandatory presidential audits have been completed. And to add to all of this, while the IRS was looking the other way for President Trump, or whatever the IRS was doing, somehow 2 of Trump's top enemies, or at least enemies as he perceived them, former FBI Director James Comey and former acting FBI Director Andy McCabe, somehow both of those men got chosen for a supposedly random and incredibly intense audit by the IRS. Out of the more than 150 million people who file taxes, only about 5,000 of them get picked for these intensive audits. 150 million, 5,000. And somehow, they were both picked. The IRS Inspector General said earlier this month that they had seen no evidence that those picks were anything but random. But just last month, we learned that President Trump repeatedly told at least one of his chiefs of staff that he wanted his enemies investigated by the IRS. Quote, among those Mr. Trump said we ought to investigate and get the IRS on were, you guessed it, former FBI Director James Comey and his deputy, Andrew McCabe.